Welcome back to the Fixed Ops Roundtable. Scott Davis, the president of Volie, is with us today. Volie is automotive's #1 BDC software. Scott is a great friend to the industry and has been blowing it up here on the Roundtable the last several events. A big study to be announced today. Scott, welcome back to the Fixed Ops Roundtable.
Hey, Ted. Great to be back. Thanks for having me.
I really enjoyed when you delivered the study. I believe it was the middle of last year, and you have millions of calls in this study, and it's eye-opening, and it got a lot of attention, Scott. So I'm so happy you're here today to update it, take us through it. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn the show over to you.
We all know what's been going on with interest rates, everything in the automotive market. The way to build predictable profits is through your service BDC. I'm going to talk about that today. So we are, okay, Ted, I don't know what I did, but you're going to cut that out, right?
Yeah, we are. Yeah. You should be able to advance the slides without that.
There we go. All right. So I'm going to talk to you today about your service BDC and how you can put a little strategy. These are the predictable profits in your dealership, and we're going to talk about this. So Volie is automotive's #1 BDC software, like Ted said. We work with dealers across North America, 620 right now, and it's a tool that it's an all-in-one solution where dealers, BDCs, they take inbound calls in Volie. When they're not on an inbound call, then we serve up the next most important outbound call. And, it's a way to make your agents turn one agent into 5. We help them be really productive. It's a multi-channel unit platform, call, email, and SMS. A lot of the email and SMS that's happening happens behind the scenes for the agents. So we focus on calls. We talk about being 85% efficient with the calls. And so I have a call study today with about that we looked at 25 million calls. So Volie's based in Fort Myers, Florida. Yeah. And just great to be here today.
I like that, by the way, turn one agent into 5 agents. That's so strong.
Yeah. Well, dealerships, everything's been getting more complex in a dealership. They have less resources. Well, they've got to do more. And BDC technology really hasn't changed. They have to do more. I was actually just speaking with one of our customers out of Miami last night, and he was talking about how the heck does he ever get it done? The general manager for a large group. So BDC is no different. We all feel it, really. But people are keeping their cars longer than any time since 2008, 2009. We know the reasons why, right? Inflation, high interest rates, a tough economy. Those are just a few. And so that means with new car sales bottoming out in 2022, loyalty's never been more important, right? Because, you get more built-in service business with new car sales because of warranties, OEM incentives, et cetera. Right, Ted?
Oh, no question about it, Scott. No doubt about it. And you hit the nail on the head with all the reasons, where we are in this current economy.
Yeah. The problem with that is that your service department is the source of a lot of sales. So that's why we put this together. Whether you use Volie or not, hopefully you can get some good information out of this. Really, the keys to doing this, first of all, if it were my BDC, understand the science behind how you can be successful, the big numbers you need to know, and then put a strategy together so you can reach out to people proactively. I'm going to show you guys why that's important. Your customers don't think of you as much as you think of them. And then put a system in place, train your people, train them on everything from scripts for service retention to voicemails, et cetera. And so you'll let your customers know that they're valuable to you and not just transactions. So that's kind of the strategy at a high level, and we'll dig into some of the stats.
Scott, I've always said that the fortune is in the follow-up, and this really helps the dealership at the dealership level do just that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so like I said, we did base this on 25 million phone calls. Last year we did it on 10. We've had a good year and had some interesting learnings with throwing a lot more data behind this. So I think you guys will like it. So first of all, inbound. Now, one thing I want to just remind everyone about service. Service is a guaranteed transaction. Every single person who buys a car needs service. They just don't necessarily need it from you guys. So how do you make sure that you keep your promises to the people who are trying to do business with you? How do you make sure that you hit the people when they're due for service before they think of someone else on the day, right? Because everyone needs service. They just don't necessarily need to get it from us. So first of all, inbound. We talked about this last year. I just wanted to highlight once again, most of your calls are coming between 2 and 5. This graph is a little bit off because the volume between 8 and 9 is about half of what it is from 9 to 1. So it makes the numbers look a little different. Your staffing strategy needs to be locked and loaded and ready at 9. Just keep in mind, if your BDC agents or anyone says, "Oh, my customers don't call at this time," or "We're not busy at this time," it's pretty normal, pretty static from 9 to 5. Busiest hour over all of these inbound calls, and of the 25 million, it was 11 million inbound calls. It was 10 to 11 this year. So, though they were all very close, within a couple points, 9 to 10, 10 to 11, 11 to 12, etc. Once again, we looked at this. Mondays are different. So your staffing strategy starts and it ends with Monday. All your part-timers, if you have them, start them on Mondays. No days off on Mondays, etc. I broke it out a little bit different than last year, but 25% more inbound calls came on Monday than Tuesday. 41% came more on Monday than Friday. So just keep that in mind. Those are big numbers. For you folks who don't have a Saturday BDC, the people who had a Saturday BDC, 8% of their call volume came in on Saturday, and most of our customers are only open a half day on that, right? So just know that if you don't have a Saturday BDC and you're forwarding calls to the cashier or whatever, you're probably missing some opportunities.
I would say, look at that. And, that kind of explains why Monday feels the way it does at the dealership. It's still dominating. Yep. Wow.
Yeah. So how do you look at drop rate? 59% of people who drop call back in. That seems pretty good, right? Last year I had the stat and it was only 37%. And with that 37%, we took a very tight window. And so this year I wanted to look at this a little bit different. The 59% was basically forever. So you do drop some people, you don't lose all of them forever. Last year's stat was very alarming to people. And once again, the average hold time or the average drop by hold time, 69% of the people dropped in less than 30 seconds. Just think of that. And of the people who dropped, 58% never serviced at the dealership again. And we went back quite a ways to get this stat, and so that we could look forward. Very important to stay on top of your drop rate. Average hold time for answers calls, 46 seconds. Average hold time for agent drops, 72 seconds. People who do wait for a long time in general, but just know that first and foremost, our goal is to make the people happy who are trying to do business with us.
Interesting. Very good.
Here's one of the alarming stats that we looked at because we have new customers start and they're like, geez, I think our inbound call volume's gone down. And we dig into it with them, and their volume hasn't gone down. Just the number of people who drop call back in a lot less. 1/3 of the people who call back in from drop calls call back many times, more than 3 times. So just think of how many extra resources your BDC is using if you're doing a bad job answering the phones. Feels like the phone's ringing all day, right? So
that's very inefficient. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, and think of how frustrated people are with that as well. So So if you call them back, good news. And 58% of them will answer. 59% of those who answer schedule an appointment. Those are conversion rates off the charts. These people are buyers. 63% had a previous service in their DMS. One of the most alarming stats is 41% of all the drops are not your fault. So we classify them in two different ways. We have customer drops and we have agent drops. The customer drops are the people that hang up as soon as it hits the IVR. And we all know customers hate IVRs, right? I mean, there's a lot of products that are coming out nowadays that try to combat that. Customers hate IVRs. Well, 41% weren't your fault. What does that tell you? You guys need to have a strategy in place where people get called back who have dropped calls every time. It's costing you tons of business.
Wow. Wow.
Okay. So this is something we looked at. We started seeing a lot of our customers tracking status checks by Service Advisor. And so we started to dig into this. And these stats are alarming. 24.56% of the calls were status checks involved. So of that, 63% were answered. And when we say answered, that means the agent successfully connected with the Service Advisor. 37% they never did. It's funny, by the way. I was at a show recently, and a few weeks ago, and one of the other vendors that were there that does some call monitoring talked about how customers connect with the service department, and only 63% of the customers got connected with the service department. So it was the exact same number. They don't connect with the BDC. They don't connect with their customers. So the alarming stat is 34% of those unsuccessful transfers didn't service again.
That is eye-opening.
Yeah. Now, I mean, there's many reasons why people don't transact again with you. You know, some of them could have moved or traded their car or gotten a wreck, you know, God forbid. But, you know, we're working on the margins at $285 an RO or whatever you're working on. You need to know these numbers. And if you can improve them even slightly, it really moves the needle, right?
Knowledge is power.
So we had hundreds of thousands of status checks in here, obviously. The average duration of a status check was 3 minutes and 59 seconds.
Wow, 4 minutes.
So think of that. 24.56% calls were status checks, 3 minutes and 59 cents. 3 minutes and 59 seconds were status checks. And the people who called in for a status check called in more than once, 1.5 times average customer. So think of the aggravation you're calling or you're causing your customers who have to call in for status checks. Put a system in place where your service advisors, you know, eliminate that call on the front end. It's a big hidden cost to your BDC. It is a source of great aggravation for your customers. It was shocking to us, really. We hadn't benchmarked it before. We will this next year. I've got some good guesses. What happened is we had a new customer, and after the first 90 days, we looked and 37% of their calls were status checks. And we started to dig into this a lot more. It was very alarming.
Oh, geez. A lot of time spent there, a whole lot. And I know you were translating that into money, but it needs to be said. Yeah.
Yeah. And, you know, how do we even quantify how aggravated people are constantly checking? Because they're checking because they feel like a promise was broken with their service advisor. So when you're not on an inbound call, it's very important to proactively reach out to your customer for outbound calls. So once again, the answer rates, by the way, the orientation of this top slide, I need to fix this because you can see in real life, it's only a few points difference. It looks like it's double, but it's just how we laid it out. The answer rates are best in the morning, but they're only a few points better. The appointment rates were actually best in the afternoon as a percentage, but once again, they were only a few points difference. It doesn't matter. Don't let anyone tell you that our customers won't make appointments at this time or our customers won't answer at this time. The real key is to keep your agents on the phone and have them be 85% efficient. 85% efficient means they're on the phones about 50 minutes an hour. So you guys can track that many different ways. That is the real key. These numbers don't matter. And I just wanted to put them out so that we don't pigeonhole ourselves into certain schedulers, because we know our customers don't do this. The data doesn't bear it out. This number is skewed heavily in Volie because we have hundreds of stores that do state inspections. Those are very short calls. I didn't want to change it. These are actual numbers. But the average call duration for an outbound appointment was 2 minutes and 16 seconds. If you take out those state inspection calls, it was almost it was still under 3 minutes, but it was a little bit higher. The average appointment time on an inbound call was 3 minutes and 52 seconds, which oddly enough is about the same as a status check. So think about why an outbound call is so much shorter than an inbound call for the amount of time spent on the phone. Well, I mean, the agent you are being proactive with your customers. You're contacting before they have issues. You can catch those in the inspection and such. Your service advisors can sell. When they're calling, they have got problems. Quite often, you've got to put them on hold, check for parts, get questions answered, et cetera. When you're doing outbound campaigns, you have control of the conversation, and people need to really put that as part of their strategy. Doing outbound, you'll have happier customers. So,
makes a lot of sense.
Answer rates by attempt. So we put a little different stat here this year. I took all of the attempts across, and it was 13 point some million that I put it in. But the answer rates by the first attempt were quite a bit better than the further ones. I'm going to show you why you should make all of them. You should make the first attempt for every reason you ever, if you're short staff, prioritize that. Last year, if you remember our presentation, Ted, we took just the people who should be due and coming in any day, and those on a 4-attempt campaign, the numbers were about 35% blended rates over all 4 attempts. They were very high on the first time, but I wanted to put these all out here because I've got a point to make on this. You should make the first attempt. You should, if you've got the staffing, make multiple attempts. One of the alarming stats, this was in last year's, and this was almost the exact same stat. So the percentage of people who the agents marked in Volie as not interested, who actually came in, and we looked at this, they came in the next 120 days, 26.86% of the, it was somewhere around 500,000 people who an agent said not interested, who came back in. Now, the cynical person is going to say, oh, those agents are calling, hanging up, and marking someone as not interested. We don't see a lot of evidence of that. You and I both know, Ted, agents have hard jobs. They're working really hard. And a lot of these people, keep in mind what we spoke about earlier. Everyone needs service, right? But maybe when I got called for service, I was out of town in Minneapolis, like I was a few days ago. And so that answer is a no. I just can't even think about it. Everyone is never a no for service. They're one of two things. If they're not going to schedule the appointment with you, they're one of two things. They're not right now, or I'm not going to get service with you. So they're never a no. So what you need to do, keep in mind, it's very important to be very friendly. It's very important not to take it personally. We have no idea what someone's day is coming. An extremely large amount of this database came back in after telling the agent they weren't interested.
Amazing. Well, follow up.
We did do the math on this, though. If you have someone just wailing away at attempts 2 through 5, it's about 2 attempts per hour. So there is a true cost of not making more than 1 attempt. You have to make the first attempt for every customer that you want to connect with. If you have the staffing, you have to prioritize going back to the ones that didn't answer.
Makes sense.
Okay, what if you connect? So last year, if you remember, Ted, we took a control group of people that weren't in campaigns, and we compared them to people who were in campaigns, and you connected with them. It was a "what if you do nothing" slide, and the lift was on your database was about 52% of, if you don't do anything with your database or you proactively reach out to them. This year we did the study a little bit different. We took all these people in Volie who were enrolled in a service retention campaign. So basically all of them theoretically made the campaign for the same criteria. And we compared the people who were spoken to compared to the people who the dealer did not speak to and didn't leave a voicemail. And the conversion rate was about 5 times.
Jeez.
So the customers are service transactions. They're just not always ready when you are. So we want to get them. We spoke about this at length last year, potential spam. So estimated that 32% of all calls are labeled as potential spam. You can find services out there. I mean, there are multiple ones, just a few numbers that you might care about. And I'll talk about what I would do if it was my dealership, if I wasn't signing up for one of these services that do it. We took millions of calls before we bundled this into Volie. We did it post that. The answer rate lift was about 38%. If you don't have this part of your strategy with your BDC, you're doing probably a lot of wasted effort. Ask yourself this, Ted, when is the last time you picked up the phone and answered when it said potential spam?
Never.
Yeah, never.
Not too often, Scott.
When we looked at this, we've got very good logging for Verizon. 7 to 10% of the numbers are always marked as spam in Verizon. So we just looked at a dealership, and they submitted 145 numbers, all the Volie numbers plus their desk phones, their click to call and everything. 48% of them were labeled as potential spam. Some of the dispersion of this was really interesting. Some of them were labeled as spam who had one attempt in the last 6 months. Other ones, I mean, most of them were their heavy use lines. We sit on, I don't know if it's 150,000 numbers. It's a big number. 6.12% of those numbers need to be remediated, meaning someone complained that they were spam. The carriers marked it as spam. We had to go back to the carriers and remove that label.
Wow.
The average remediation was 2 times. So these folks are maybe working pretty hard to get these numbers labeled as potential spam, but so almost an average of 2 times those 6.12 numbers. So what do you guys do about it? First and foremost, and this is the manual grunt work. If you haven't heard this, take a cell phone from all 3 major carriers and test your numbers. Test them in the morning, afternoon, and night. It seems like a lot of work, but I would at least do that to see if we got a problem. And then there's many things you can do. You can register with the free caller registry. You have to do it a lot. There's services that can do it. But at the very least, you should be aware of what it is. Swapping out numbers is not an effective strategy because they're not making any new phone numbers. When they throw a number back in the pool, they're grabbing one quite often that has a bad reputation. So just keep that in mind. You need to look. It's probably costing you a lot of service business.
And this potential spam for dealers, we didn't talk about that a few years ago, but we didn't have the number of calls that are labeled spam today, Scott. And this is a big potential issue that dealers need to be aware of.
Yeah. And really it's not the dealer's fault, and the dealers don't make unwanted calls. Most of our traffic, I would bet 97% of it is you have service due, you have a recall, checking on your service, appointment confirmation, and you submitted a lead, and I'm following up on it. All of those, none of those make the definition of an unwanted call. What happened was there was legislation that was passed a few years ago. Then there was a famous Facebook case that kind of laxed the rules for robodialing. The government went to the carriers and say, okay, now that it's easier to robodial, it's up to you guys to solve this problem. And the carriers are aggressively trying to solve it. It's going to get worse.
Okay. Good to be aware.
A little more numbers. One of the ones, we had a customer doing this, and I was pretty surprised. We took all of our customers who do sales BDC and service BDC, and we took their leads plus or minus 10 days and saw if someone enrolled in a service campaign had an active sales lead. So for the life of me, I mean, we can do that programmatically. We put it on our list. But if you have a strategy where you can look, 3% of the people who we looked at had an active sales lead who were due for service. Pretty interesting.
I would say.
Should you leave a voicemail? You should absolutely leave a voicemail. For sure, 100% on the first time. When we looked at this, I can't believe this number's right, but we double checked it many times. And we also looked at outbound conversions, and 40% of the outbound conversions were from people calling back in from an outbound campaign. 26.7% of the people call back if you leave a voicemail. 64% better conversion if you never reach them, but you leave a voicemail compared to if you don't. You're nuts if you don't leave one. You're nuts if you don't train to it and practice it and role play it. Leave friendly voicemails. Don't mail them in. One of the strategies that you need to do, we need to catch people before they're ready for service. We looked across all brands. I have the breakdown, but I just included all of them for this slide. 229 days between services for the average customer. Volie's sitting on 244 million customers, matched 4 billion records for those 244 million customers. The average service time between service was 229 days. So if it was my business, I would look at my duration, my average duration, and I would walk that back 6 weeks and start reaching out to those people. Be proactive with them. Many of you are booked out 3 weeks, depending on what the customer would do if it's more than a quick lube. So aren't you much better off being proactive there? You got to catch these people before they think of it somewhere else. The outbound math, once again, it hasn't changed. It's a game of effort. 100 extra service attempts should be an extra 7 to 9 appointments. And depending on how you do the math, that would be an extra 3.5 to 4 people who weren't going to come in. The numbers are clear over millions of calls. When I say faster or not at all, keep in mind, so if every outbound appointment you schedule, they either weren't coming in or you got them to come in faster. The odds of you, it has to be a very small percentage of people who you called them on the day they were going to call you and come in, right? I mean, does it seem logical?
Sure.
Oh, this is very tough math. I don't even know how to guess it on this call, but just think if everyone, if you can go to schedule 1,000 outbound appointments a month now, and every one of those came in 3 weeks early, speeding up the velocity of that database, maybe that turns your average number of transactions per customer. Maybe if it goes from 2 times a year to 2.15 times a year, you do the math, you got an extra month of service. So keep in mind, every outbound service you schedule, you got them to come in faster, or they weren't going to come in at all. So make those extra outbound attempts. Make it part of your strategy. Benchmark it separately than your inbound calls. So these are pretty similar to last year. You want the agents on the phone 85% of the time. By the way, I don't believe an agent needs to be on the phone 60 minutes an hour. They have hard jobs. They get yelled at nearly every day, whether it's internally or by the customers, et cetera. But if they're on the phone 50 minutes an hour, keep your drop rate below 6%. That's a good benchmark. And call back 100% of the people who did drop. There's a lot of buyers there. If we know one thing more than nearly anything, and if I have one tip, because we rarely see dealers before this benchmark outbound attempts separately from inbound calls. Know those numbers. Know them religiously. If you don't, you'll lose track of those outbound calls, and you'll have weeks go by if you don't benchmark those separately where you had no outbound strategy. We see it all the time.
Jeez.
In dealers we just add. They'll admit up to that. Status checks. I don't know what the good benchmark is. I've got some guesses looking at some of our better stores. Next year on this presentation, Ted, I'm going to have some incredible numbers for you here. Internally, you should start checking. We had a new customer that I went recently, and their status check percentage was about 9%. Fabulous relative to the average. I also, we've seen people with status check percentages of 37%. Measure your conversions for the number of people you speak to. Always effective. I included some best-in-class numbers here, Ted. These are kind of interesting. Some of them are BDC numbers. Some of them are individual numbers. And a couple, I actually, even though I wanted to make this about calls again, because like I said, there are a lot of ways to send an email and SMS. Your agents can do those automatically. We'll still be on the phone. But these are all BDC stats and over a month. We have a BDC averaging 33 productive calls per hour, 6 appointments per hour as a whole BDC, and averaging 240 inbound, outbound combined attempts a day per agent. So they schedule almost 1,100 outbound appointments a week, this BDC. There's an agent at one BDC, and this is a state inspection email. I don't know. I suspect this is that, but this person in a week scheduled 85 appointments on 182 conversations. So I suspect they were state inspections because I know what store it was for, but very good. You should measure that. We have an agent averaging 47 appointments a day.
Wow.
She's just a machine for this one dealer group. We've got a large dealer group. Their drop rate is 4.88%. Here's an interesting stat right here. So are you guys keeping track of the amount of inbound lead calls? Basically, subtract all the transfers, all the status checks, the calls where people call to schedule an appointment. How successful are you? Our best one, their conversion is 93.6% on inbound calls. So that's an interesting stat. I didn't talk about it earlier. It's a really good way to find out how good your people are on the phone, how well trained they are. I'd look at that if I were you.
Yeah.
These next two are SMS. I included them because I was blown away by them, actually. So we've got an agent who over a month is managing 47 SMS conversations an hour. They have a very aggressive
an hour.
Yeah. So they have, it's an extremely large store. It's a 2-store group. One of the stores does something like 10,000 ROs a month. But yes, I mean, they deploy these campaigns. She's seamlessly working between this. We have another agent, same BDC. She's averaging 8 SMS appointments per hour. So those blew me away. I just had to include them for the fun of it. So
Sure.
I hope you guys have enjoyed these stats today. So, well, I've got an extra dot there, but the best BDC we have is averaging 2.7 outbound attempts to inbound calls they're receiving. So just keep that in mind. Benchmark it separately. You'll be happy you did. Once again, to talk about the key learnings, blended is better. Have a strategy where when they're not doing inbound calls, they're aggressively making outbound calls. But first, focus on the people trying to do business with you. It amazes me. We break promises with our customers all day. There's a lot of business to be had just by meeting their expectations. I've got an incredible call. Ted, I'll play it for you on the next time we're on live, where someone is calling back to thank a dealer for calling them back. They were blown away. Effort matters. Remember, 100 outbound attempts should be 7 to 9 service appointments. Make those extra 100 attempts in a day, in a week, etc. Being cheerful. Once again, every person buys service. They don't necessarily buy it from you. And every no is actually a not right now because of that. So be cheerful, and even when you get no's, we know no Mondays off for anyone, and you need to be proactively with outbound. You need to make more than one attempt. Our customers don't think of us as much as we think of them. Finally, and the new stat, and I'll have some really good benchmarking on this next year. Avoid the hidden cost of status checks. Start tracking your status checks by service advisors. Work with your service managers. Eliminate those, and you've got a lot of extra time to build your service business. So there you are, Ted.
Scott, great information, powerful. I've been sitting here taking notes. I want to watch it again and again. There was so much in here. You crammed. What an amazing study. 25 million. Scott Davis, thank you on behalf of the Fixed Ops Roundtable. If people want to reach out for more information on Volie, is the best way?
Yeah, just email me. I mean, they can go on the website and put a lead in. They can email me. Email me if you want a copy of the deck. I'll send it to you. I'm good with sending it out. So love to talk to you. Whether or not you're signing up for Volie, I have a lot of appreciation for how hard BDCs are working. So I'd love to help them.
And how important the phones are in this day and age. Scott Davis, on behalf of the Fixed Ops Roundtable, thank you for all you do at Volie to move our industry forward. I'm very grateful to have you with us.
Thank you. Have a good day, Ted. Thanks for having me on again.
Everybody, Scott Davis, we'll have him back again and again. The president of Volie, Volie.com, here today at the Fixed Ops Roundtable.
See ya.